Pearl Harbor is a U.S. naval base near Honolulu, Hawaii, that was the scene of a devastating surprise attack by Japanese forces on December 7, 1941. Just before 8 a.m. on that Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy or damage nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships, and over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died in the attack, including civilians, and another 1,000 people were wounded. The day after the assault, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. This is 10 interesting Pearl Harbor facts. The first of many Pearl Harbor facts: the day before the attacks, the USS Arizona took on a full load of fuel, nearly 1.5 million gallons. Much of that fuel helped ignite the explosion and subsequent fires that destroyed the ships, but amazingly, some fuel continues to seep out of the wreckage. According to the History Channel, the Arizona continues to spill up to 9 quarts of oil into the harbor each day. This adds to the emotional gravity of this memorial, and those visiting often refer to this phenomenon as the Tears of the Arizona or Black Tears. Some new information discovered in the last year is that on the morning of December 7, 1941, the Wickes-class destroyer USS Ward attacked and sank a Kohayateki-class midget submarine near the entrance to the harbor, making it not only the first shot fired on that day, but the first official American shots in the war. The Japanese sub's periscope was spotted above the water by the minesweeper Condor, which alerted the crew of the Ward, who opened fire on the intruder. Japan concentrated on just destroying battleships of the US Navy, as it thought that the Pacific Fleet battles would be decided on them. This proved to be wrong. Had Japan focused the attack beyond the fleet and targeted Navy repair yards, oil tank farms, submarine base, and old headquarters building, it could have inflicted far greater damage. Because the plan was made to focus on battleships, American aircraft carriers were untouched by the attack because they were out at sea. This led to America being able to rebuild quickly and ultimately reverse the Japanese advance after the setbacks of early 1942. Admiral Hara Tadaichi summed up the Japanese result by saying, "We won a great tactical victory at Pearl Harbor and thereby lost the war." On December 8, the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Congress approved Roosevelt's declaration of war. The US declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Japanese allies Germany and Italy declared war against the United States. More than 2 years after the start of the conflict, the United States had finally entered World War II. The Japanese forces had planned to use their submarines for a number of different tasks before, during, and after the Pearl Harbor attack. Prior to the Japanese bombers and fighter planes arriving from their aircraft carriers to the north, these submarines were to scout and penetrate the defenses of the harbor. Once the attack from the air started, they were to release their torpedoes at prime targets and escape back out the channel. After the attack, these submarines were to station themselves in pre-designated spots of the islands to pick up any pilots who couldn't make it back to their carriers due to fuel or mechanical issues. One such pilot landed on Niihau, a small Hawaiian island near Kauai. Unfortunately for that Japanese pilot, his submarine had long left its position, stranding him there. In the surprise attack on December 7, the Arizona and Oklahoma were the only ships damaged beyond repair by bombs or torpedo hits. Of the 2,026 American sailors and Marines killed in the attack, 1,606 had been aboard these 2 ships. 3 more battleships, the California, West Virginia, and Nevada, sank upright in the shallow water of the harbor. They were salvaged, and while many vessels did not return to the battlefield for several years, most suffered repairable damage. The battleship Missouri is now anchored there. The wonderful USS Arizona fact that honors the survivors is that they have the option to join their lost comrades and make ship their final resting place. Crew members who served on board the USS Arizona during the attack may choose to have their ashes deposited by divers beneath one of sunken Arizona's gun turrets. Roughly 44 Arizona survivors have chosen this option. Other military survivors can choose to have their ashes scattered wherever their ship was located during the attacks. The last person to be interred in the ship was in 2019. Japan's naval forces depended on the United States for the supply of natural and industrial resources, namely oil, without which its forces would be significantly impaired. This led to Japan to target Southeast Asia, rich in minerals and oil. While they knew that such an invasion would lead to war against America, Japan decided to destroy America's Pacific Fleet to prevent American interference in its plan to access resources of countries in Southeast Asia, which Japan called Southern Resource Area. This was the primary reason behind the attack on Pearl Harbor. Coming in from all directions, the defenders had no idea which direction they should fire. Wave after wave, Japanese planes arrived targeting airstrips, ships, buildings, and storage areas. Dive bombers, fighters, torpedo bombers, and high-level bombers blanketed the sky, dropping their deadly payloads across the island of Oahu. The two waves of aircraft enacted a heavy toll on their targets, namely Battleship Row. While most people can tell you that the Japanese were responsible for the attacks, not everyone realizes that the Japanese now visit the memorial in droves. Japan, now one of America's strongest allies, is the largest source of international tourists to the state of Hawaii. Japanese visitors pay their respects at National Memorial just as Americans do.